Your budget is not broken. Your identity has been monetized. That sounds dramatic at first, maybe even exaggerated, but look closely at the way modern life works. You wake up tired, and someone has a product for that. You feel behind, and someone has an upgrade for that. You feel lonely, and someone has an experience for that. You feel insecure, and someone has clothing, skincare, fitness gear, supplements, courses, gadgets, or a whole lifestyle for that. You feel stressed, and someone has convenience ready for you. One tap, one payment, one delivery, one subscription, one little reward, one tiny escape, and none of it looks dangerous. That is exactly why it works. Most people do not destroy their financial future with one stupid decision. They do it through purchases that feel reasonable in the moment. A little comfort here, a little status there, a little convenience after a hard day, a little upgrade because it was time, a little subscription because it is only a few dollars, a little dinner because life is short, a little shopping because I deserve something nice. And individually, each decision seems defensible. That is the trap. The most expensive habits are usually the ones that never feel expensive while you are doing them. They feel normal. They feel deserved. They feel like adulthood. They feel like self-care. They feel like finally getting something back from a life that keeps taking. But here is the uncomfortable part. A lot of what people call treating themselves is not enjoyment. It is emotional compensation. It is a small payment made to avoid feeling something. And the market knows this. The market does not need you to be rich. It only needs you to be tired, insecure, bored, anxious, or afraid of being left behind. That is enough. Because once your emotions are predictable, your spending becomes predictable. And once your spending is predictable, someone else can build a business model around it. That is the real issue. Not that you buy things. Buying things is not the enemy. Food is not the enemy. Clothes are not the enemy. Technology is not the enemy. Travel is not the enemy. Pleasure is not the enemy. The enemy is unconscious spending that dresses itself as personality. You do not just buy the thing. You buy what the thing promises to say about you. You buy organized. You buy attractive. You buy successful. You buy disciplined. You buy modern. You buy relaxed. You buy interesting. You buy, I am doing better than before. You buy, I am not falling behind. You buy a temporary identity. And temporary identities are expensive because they expire fast. That is why one purchase rarely stays one purchase. You buy new shoes, and suddenly the old clothes look wrong. You buy a better desk, and suddenly the room looks unfinished. You buy one premium tool, and now the rest of your setup feels cheap. You buy a new version of yourself, and then everything around that version starts demanding updates. The object was never alone. It came with a world. And if you are not careful, you do not buy products anymore. You buy membership in a lifestyle you cannot actually afford yet. That is where many people lose control. Not in obvious luxury, not in wild irresponsibility, but in the quiet pressure to keep matching the version of themselves they just purchased. And the cruel part is this. The world will always sell you a more expensive version of who you could become. Always. There will always be a better phone, a cleaner aesthetic, a sharper wardrobe, a more optimized morning routine, a more impressive apartment. A more productive workspace, a more beautiful vacation, a more disciplined body, a more successful image, a more upgraded life. And if you do not decide who you are before the market decides for you, your money will keep chasing a moving target. That target is not financial freedom. It is emotional relief with better branding. And emotional relief is one of the most profitable products on earth. Think about it. People rarely say, I am going to sabotage my savings today. They say, I need this. I have been working hard. It is just this once. It is on sale. It will make my life easier. It is an investment. I can pay it later. I am not buying much. It is not that serious. I deserve it. And sometimes they are right. Sometimes you do need rest. Sometimes you do deserve a good meal. Sometimes a tool does make your work easier. Sometimes buying something better saves time, energy, and frustration. The problem is not the sentence. The problem is how often that sentence becomes a legal defense for a habit that is quietly draining your future. A good excuse used once may be harmless. A good excuse repeated for years becomes architecture. It becomes the structure of your financial life. And one day, you look around and realize your money did not disappear. It was assigned. Assigned to moods. Assigned to convenience. Assigned to approval. Assigned to fatigue. Assigned to boredom. Assigned to people you were trying to impress. assigned to versions of yourself you never actually became. That is why the question is not only, what did I spend money on? The better question is, what emotion was spending through me? Because money rarely leaves without a story. Sometimes the story is simple. You needed food. You paid rent. You fixed the car. You took care of your health. You helped your family. That is real life. But other times the story is different. You bought because you felt behind. You bought because someone else's life made yours feel small. You bought because you were exhausted and wanted life to stop asking things from you. You bought because saying no felt embarrassing. You bought because the image of having it felt better than the reality of needing to save. You bought because for a few minutes, the purchase made you feel in control. And that last one matters. A lot of spending is not about pleasure. It is about control. When life feels chaotic, buying something gives you a clean little moment of decision. You choose, you pay, you receive. The world obeys. For a second, everything is simple. That is powerful, especially for people whose real life feels complicated, underpaid, overworked, or emotionally heavy. The purchase becomes a tiny room where control still exists, but the room is rented, and the rent comes due later. That is the part people underestimate. The emotional benefit arrives immediately. The financial cost arrives in fragments. A charge here, a payment there, a subscription next month, a credit card balance, a missing emergency fund, a delayed investment, a dream postponed, a job you cannot leave, a risk you cannot take, a life that keeps feeling smaller than it should. This is why modern overspending is so hard to detect. It does not always look like chaos. Sometimes it looks like being normal. Normal delivery, normal upgrades, normal streaming services, normal little comforts, normal social plans, normal online shopping, normal lifestyle inflation, normal payments, normal debt, normal stress. And when a trap becomes normal, people stop calling it a trap. They call it life. That is why the first step is not cutting everything. The first step is refusing to let normal behavior remain invisible. Because what stays invisible keeps charging you. The payment is not always money. Sometimes the payment is freedom. Sometimes it is time. Sometimes it is mental peace. Sometimes it is the ability to say no. Sometimes it is the ability to leave a bad situation. Sometimes it is the ability to take a better opportunity. Sometimes it is the ability to stop living one emergency away from panic. That is why money matters. Not because money makes you superior. Not because saving makes you morally better. Not because spending is evil. Money matters because margin matters. And margin is the difference between a hard life and a trapped life. A hard life still has problems. A trapped life has problems and no room to move. That is what many people are actually buying away when they overspend. Their room to move. They trade it for small comforts, for social approval, for the feeling of keeping up, for a cleaner image, for convenience, for temporary relief. And then they wonder why they feel stuck. But being stuck is not always caused by one big chain. Sometimes it is caused by hundreds of small threads, each one light, each one reasonable, each one easy to justify. Together, they hold you in place. This is where the idea of a budget becomes misunderstood. Most people think a budget is a restriction, a punishment, a boring spreadsheet, a parental voice inside your phone telling you not to live. But a real budget is not a cage. A real budget is a power structure. It decides which version of you gets funded first. The impulsive version, the tired version, the insecure version, the social version, the future version, the free version. Every month, your money votes. And if you do not control the vote, your mood will. Your ads will. Your friends will. Your exhaustion will. Your insecurity will. Your phone will. Your boredom will. Your need to prove something will. And then your future self loses the election every single month. That is why Save What Is Left fails so often. It sounds reasonable. Pay your bills. Live your life. Save whatever remains. But by the time whatever remains arrives, your money has already been through a battlefield. Convenience took some. Impulse took some. Social pressure took some. Fatigue took some. A subscription took some. A sale took some. A bad day took some. A good mood took some. A moment of loneliness took some. A desire to feel like someone else took some. And then savings gets whatever survived. Usually not much. Sometimes nothing. And then people say, I guess I just cannot save. But maybe that is not true. Maybe you can save. You just keep asking your future to eat last. And anything that eats last in your financial life eventually starves. If freedom matters, it cannot receive leftovers. If an emergency fund matters, it cannot receive leftovers. If investing matters, it cannot receive leftovers. If leaving a job, building a business, paying debt, buying a home, helping your family, or changing your life matters, it cannot receive leftovers. It needs priority. Not because you are obsessed with money, because everything without priority becomes optional, and optional things disappear under pressure. This is why the first serious financial move is not mathematical. It is political. You decide who gets power. The present impulse or the future you. The tired you or the strategic you. The version that wants relief or the version that wants freedom. And once you see it that way, saving first stops being a cute personal finance tip. It becomes a declaration. It says, "My future is not waiting to see if my impulses were generous." That sentence matters, because impulses are not generous. They do not care about your retirement. They do not care about your emergency fund. They do not care about your debt. They do not care about your stress next month. They care about relief now. And if you let relief now manage every decision, relief now will take everything. Not because it is evil, because it is immediate. Immediate emotions are loud. Future needs whisper. Your future does not interrupt you with notifications. It does not flash a discount code. It does not send you a limited time offer. It does not make a beautiful video showing you how good your life could look if you buy now. Your future is quiet. And in a noisy world, quiet things need protection. That is what saving is. Protection for the quiet part of your life. The part that cannot defend itself today, but will need you later. Now, this is where people usually want a list. Tell me what to stop buying. Tell me which expenses are bad. Tell me which apps to delete. Tell me what percentage to save. Tell me the rule. And yes, rules help. But rules without self-knowledge become temporary. You follow them for a week, maybe a month, then one bad day breaks them. Because the real question is not just what you buy. It is why you buy when you already know better. Everybody knows something. People know debt can be dangerous. People know impulse shopping is not ideal. People know eating out too often adds up. People know subscriptions pile up. People know saving earlier helps. People know investing matters. Most people are not ignorant. They are emotionally outmaneuvered. Their knowledge shows up with a notebook. Their emotions show up with a credit card. And the credit card wins. So you need to understand your spending personality, not your income, not just your expenses, your spending personality. There are people who spend to escape. They do not want luxury. They want silence. They want the day to stop. They want someone else to cook, deliver, decide, clean, organize, entertain. Their spending is fatigue wearing a mask. There are people who spend to belong. They do not want the thing as much as they want the access. The dinner, the group, the trip, the shared experience. The ability to say, "I was there too." Their spending is fear of exclusion. There are people who spend to upgrade identity. They are always one purchase away from becoming the person they imagine. The organized person, the fit person, the creative person, the disciplined person, the successful person. Their spending is self-improvement theater. There are people who spend to prove they are doing well, to prove they moved on, to prove they are not poor, to prove they have taste, to prove they are generous, to prove they can keep up. Their spending is a public relations campaign. There are people who spend because they cannot tolerate unused money. If the money is there, it feels available. If it feels available, it feels spendable. Their problem is not desire. It is lack of separation. And there are people who spend through guilt. They pay for others. They rescue. They lend. They give. They say yes, not because they can, but because saying no threatens their identity as a good person. Their spending is fear of rejection, disguised as kindness. Each type needs a different solution. A person who spends from fatigue does not need the same system as a person who spends from status. A person who spends through guilt does not need the same rule as someone addicted to upgrades. A person who uses shopping to become a fantasy version of themselves does not need only a spreadsheet. They need a confrontation with the fantasy. This is why generic financial advice often fails. It treats all spending as numbers. But numbers are the surface. Emotion is the engine. And if you only cut the surface, the engine keeps running. It will find a new category. Maybe you stop buying clothes, but start buying gadgets. You stop eating out, but start ordering things online. You stop going out, but start spending on home upgrades. You stop one leak and another one opens. Because the product changed, but the emotional job remained. That is the phrase to remember. Every repeated expense has an emotional job. It does something for you. It calms you. It distracts you. It validates you. It places you in a group. It creates a sense of progress. It gives you a reason to hope. It helps you avoid a feeling. It lets you perform a version of yourself. Until you identify the job, you cannot replace the expense. You can only suppress it. And suppression eventually gets tired. So instead of asking, how do I stop spending? Ask, what job is this spending doing for me? That question is sharper, because if delivery is doing the job of relief after work, you need another relief system. If clothing is doing the job of confidence, you need another confidence system. If gadgets are doing the job of progress, you need another progress system. If social spending is doing the job of belonging, you need another belonging system. If gifts are doing the job of avoiding rejection, you need boundaries, not just budgeting. Boundaries, because a lot of financial damage comes from missing boundaries. Boundaries with yourself, boundaries with family, boundaries with friends, boundaries with advertising, boundaries with platforms, boundaries with fantasy, boundaries with the part of you that says, come on, just this once. And here's the truth. Just this once is rarely just once. It is usually the slogan of a pattern trying to stay alive. That does not mean you can never enjoy anything spontaneous. It means spontaneity should not have unlimited access to your financial future. Freedom does not mean every impulse gets funded. Freedom means you decide which impulses deserve a place, and that requires hierarchy. Your money needs hierarchy. First, survival. Second, protection. Third, growth. Fourth, enjoyment. Most people reverse it. They enjoy first, then try to grow, then hope to protect themselves, then panic when survival becomes expensive. That order creates stress, not immediately, but over time. Because when enjoyment comes first, everything serious becomes negotiable. Savings becomes negotiable. Investing becomes negotiable. Debt payments become negotiable. Emergency funds become negotiable. Health becomes negotiable. Sleep becomes negotiable. Future choices become negotiable. And when everything important is negotiable, the easiest pleasure wins. That is not a personal flaw. That is human design. The easiest pleasure often wins, unless the system protects a better decision. So build the system, not because you are weak, because you are not a machine. You are a person with moods, fatigue, desires, insecurities, memories, and social pressure. A good financial system respects that reality. It does not pretend you will be rational every night. It does not pretend you will always be motivated. It does not pretend you will calmly compare future value with present comfort after a terrible day. It assumes you will be human, and then it builds guardrails. A transfer that happens before you touch the money. A separate account that removes temptation. A waiting rule for unplanned purchases. A spending limit for social plans. A rule against buying emotionally at night. A rule that if it was not planned and is not urgent, it waits. A rule that monthly payments do not get added just because they are small. A rule that your savings account is not an emotional wallet. A rule that helping others cannot require abandoning yourself. These rules are not restrictions. They are protection from your most expensive moods, because your most expensive mood might not be greed. It might be exhaustion, or loneliness, or envy, or guilt, or the desire to be seen as someone who is doing better. And if you do not know which mood costs you the most, you are financially blind in a very specific way. So do this. Look at your last 30 days of spending. Do not judge it yet. Just label it. Not by category. By emotional source. This was necessity. This was planning. This was convenience. This was fatigue. This was insecurity. This was guilt. This was belonging. This was boredom. This was status. This was fantasy. This was real enjoyment. This was useful. This was avoidance. At first, it will feel uncomfortable. Good. That discomfort is information. Because once you label the emotional source, you stop seeing spending as random. You see the pattern. Maybe your biggest category is not food. Maybe it is fatigue. Maybe it is not clothing. Maybe it is self-doubt. Maybe it is not entertainment. Maybe it is avoidance. Maybe it is not generosity. Maybe it is fear of disappointing people. Maybe it is not education. Maybe it is buying the feeling of progress without doing the work. That last one is extremely common. People buy the identity of change before they change. They buy the running shoes before they run. The planner before they organize. The course before they study. The camera before they create. The desk before they work. The app before they build the habit. The supplements before they fix the basics. The business tools before they have a business. And for a moment, it feels like movement. But buying preparation is not the same as making progress. Preparation can be useful, but when preparation becomes a substitute for action, it becomes expensive theater. You are not building a life. You are decorating the idea of one. And that is a hard sentence, but it is necessary, because many people are not broke from pleasure. They are broke from symbolic progress. They keep purchasing the emotional feeling of becoming someone, but the actual behavior never arrives. So ask yourself before buying anything connected to self-improvement, have I already used what I bought last time? If not, the next purchase is probably not progress. It is avoidance with better packaging. And this applies to money itself. Some people consume financial content the same way others consume shopping content. They watch, they plan, they imagine, they save posts, they buy notebooks, they talk about changing, but they never automate the transfer. They never face the debt. They never cancel the leak. They never build the emergency fund. They never invest the first amount. They keep buying the feeling of being financially serious without doing the serious thing. This is not about shame. It is about honesty, because honesty is cheaper than denial. Denial is expensive. Denial lets subscriptions run. Denial lets debt grow. Denial lets lifestyle inflate. Denial lets emotional purchases pretend to be needs. Denial lets your future remain unfunded while your present keeps performing confidence. And confidence without structure is fragile. It collapses when the bill comes. Real confidence is quieter. It says, I know what my money's doing. I know what I can afford. I know what I am building. I know what I am not willing to trade. I can enjoy things without being controlled by them. That is the goal, not deprivation. Direction, not guilt. Clarity, not obsession. Authority, because the opposite of overspending is not misery. The opposite of overspending is assigned money. Money with a job, money with a place, money with a mission stronger than your mood. And the moment your money has a mission, some purchases lose their power. Not all, but some, because now the purchase is not competing against nothing. It is competing against a future that has a name, an emergency fund, a house, a business, debt freedom, investment, moving out, leaving a job, taking care of family, buying time, buying peace. When your goal has no name, any desire can beat it. When your goal has a name, the fight becomes fair. That is why saving money is too abstract. Saving for what? For whom? For what option? For what escape? For what freedom? For what future day when you will be glad you did not spend everything? Name it. Because unnamed money is vulnerable money. And vulnerable money gets recruited by whatever emotion is loudest. So the question becomes very simple. What is your money being recruited for? Because if you do not recruit it first, something else will. Your tiredness will recruit it. Your insecurity will recruit it. Your loneliness will recruit it. Your social circle will recruit it. Your phone will recruit it. A company with better data than your self-control will recruit it. And that is not an insult. It is just reality. The people designing the systems around you are not guessing. They know friction matters. They know timing matters. They know colors matter. They know default settings matter. They know stored cards matter. They know countdowns matter. They know that when you are tired, you are more likely to choose the easy option. They know that when you feel behind, an upgrade feels like progress. They know that when you feel lonely, an experience feels like medicine. They know that when you feel insecure, a product that promises identity becomes more attractive. So, the solution cannot be, I will just be stronger. That is too weak. Not because you are weak, because the environment is not neutral. If the environment is designed to reduce your resistance, then you need to design your life to increase your protection. That is the real game, not motivation. Design. You do not need to win 1,000 battles with willpower. You need fewer battles, fewer triggers, fewer open doors, fewer stored cards, fewer emotional decisions made at the worst possible time, fewer moments where your tired self has full authority over your financial future. Because tired you is not evil. Tired you just wants relief, but tired you should not control the whole budget. Lonely you is not evil. Lonely you wants connection, but lonely you should not control the credit card. Insecure you is not evil. Insecure you wants reassurance. But insecure you should not be the chief financial officer of your life. That is the shift. You stop treating every emotion as a trustworthy manager. Emotions are signals, not orders. They tell you something is happening. They do not automatically deserve purchasing power. This one idea can save you thousands over time. A feeling can be real and still not be a good financial advisor. You can truly feel tired and still not need to spend. You can truly feel behind and still not need an upgrade. You can truly feel lonely and still not need an expensive night out. You can truly feel insecure and still not need to buy a new identity. You can truly want something and still decide it is not the moment. That is maturity, not repression, not punishment. Maturity, the ability to feel something without immediately financing it. Because if every feeling gets funded, your future gets unfunded. And that is exactly what happens to many people. They are not failing because they do not care about the future. They care. They think about it. They worry about it. They say they want to save. They say they want to invest. They say they want to be free. But their current emotional system keeps outvoting that future, again and again. So you need a voting system where the future has automatic votes before the mood, before the sale, before the social invitation, before the stress, before the late-night browsing, before the I deserve it. That is what automation does. It gives your future a vote before your feelings start campaigning. And if you think that sounds too mechanical, good. It should be mechanical. The important parts of your financial life should not depend on your mood. Rent does not depend on your mood. Bills do not depend on your mood. Debt payments do not depend on your mood. So why should your freedom depend on your mood? Why should your emergency fund depend on whether you felt disciplined after everyone else got paid? Why should your investments depend on whether you still had money left after a month of emotional negotiations? That is not a plan. That is a lottery. A monthly lottery where your future only wins if your impulses behave. And impulses do not behave consistently. Systems do. That is why one of the strongest moves is simple. When money arrives, separate it immediately. Not later. Not at the end. Not once you see what remains. Immediately. Give survival its portion. Give protection its portion. Give growth its portion. Give enjoyment its portion. And then live inside the part assigned to daily life. This does not need to be perfect. It needs to be real. Even if the first amount is small, the psychological shift is huge because you are training your brain to understand that not all money in your life is available for emotional use. Some money is protected. Some money belongs to a future decision. Some money is not yours to spend casually. Not because a bank says so, because you decided so. That decision builds authority, and authority is what most people are missing. They have income. They have bills. They have desires. They have pressure. But they do not have authority. Money enters. Life takes it. And then they wait for the next payment. That cycle creates a very specific kind of exhaustion. Not just financial exhaustion, identity exhaustion. You start feeling like someone who cannot move. Someone who works but does not build. Someone who earns but does not accumulate. Someone who tries but always returns to the same place. And when that identity settles in, it becomes dangerous. Because if you believe you are bad with money, you stop looking for systems. You start treating chaos like personality. I am just like this. I am not good at saving. Money disappears. I always mess it up. No, money does not disappear. Money obeys patterns. If you change the pattern, you change the result. Maybe not overnight, maybe not dramatically, but enough to prove something important. You are not your old financial habits. You are the person who can redesign them. And redesign starts with clarity. So here is a practical exercise. For the next 7 days, do not try to become perfect. Just create a pause before every unplanned purchase. Not a long meditation, not a complicated spreadsheet. A pause. Ask 3 questions. First, what feeling is active right now? Second, what job do I expect this purchase to do for me? Third, will this still matter 48 hours from now? That is it. Those 3 questions separate you from the impulse. And separation is power. Because the impulse wants immediacy. It does not want questions. Questions slow it down. Questions expose it. Questions turn a trance back into a decision. If after 48 hours the purchase still makes sense, maybe buy it. But now it is not automatic. It survived clarity. Most impulse purchases do not survive clarity. They survive speed. That is why speed is profitable. The faster you buy, the less of yourself is involved. You do not bring your values. You do not bring your future. You do not bring your goals. You bring one mood, and one mood is not enough to make a financial decision. So slow it down. Add friction. Friction is not inconvenience. Friction is protection. Remove stored cards from shopping apps. Move delivery apps off your home screen. Unsubscribe from promotional emails. Do not browse stores as entertainment. Create a rule that unplanned purchases over a certain amount wait. Do not shop when hungry, angry, lonely, tired, or trying to prove something. Those states are expensive, not because they are shameful, because they distort value. When you are hungry, everything looks necessary. When you are lonely, every plan looks meaningful. When you are insecure, every upgrade looks urgent. When you are tired, every convenience looks rational. When you are trying to prove something, every price looks smaller than the image you want to buy. That is why timing matters. A purchase made in a distorted state should not be trusted immediately. Delay it. Let the emotion cool. Then decide. You are not saying no forever. You are saying, I do not let temporary states make permanent financial commitments. That is a strong rule, especially with debt, because debt turns a temporary emotion into a future obligation. You felt something today, you pay for it next month, and maybe the month after, and maybe for a year, the feeling left. The payment stayed. That is why debt for emotional purchases is so dangerous. It makes the past louder than the present. You cannot use next month's income freely because last month's mood already claimed it. And when too many past moods claim too much future income, you lose movement. Your paycheck arrives already occupied. Part of it belongs to something you do not even care about anymore. Part belongs to a version of you that was tired. Part belongs to a version of you that wanted to impress. Part belongs to a version of you that panicked. Part belongs to a version of you that said, I will deal with it later. And now later is here. That is the hidden cruelty of emotional spending on credit. You are forced to keep funding old feelings after they stopped helping you. So create a debt rule. If the purchase is emotional, it cannot use future income. If you want something for comfort, status, image, or convenience, it must come from money already assigned for enjoyment. Not credit, not emergency savings, not investment money, not future paychecks, enjoyment money. That rule does two things. It protects your future, and it tells the truth. If the purchase is truly worth it, it should fit inside the part of your life dedicated to pleasure. If it requires stealing from protection, growth, or future income, maybe it is not pleasure. Maybe it is escape, and escape should not get unlimited funding. Now, there is another problem. Many people think they are being responsible because they can make the payment. That is a low standard. Can I make the payment? Is not enough. Ask, do I want this payment living in my life? A payment is not just a number. It is a roommate. It shows up every month. It takes space. It reduces options. It changes what you can say yes to. It changes what you can say no to. So before accepting a payment, imagine it sitting in your house for months, taking a chair, eating from your paycheck, interrupting future plans. Is it still worth it? Sometimes yes. A home, a necessary car, education with real return, medical needs, essential tools, strategic investments. Life is not pure avoidance. But many monthly payments are not strategic. They are little monuments to moments of impatience. And too many monuments become a cemetery for your options. That line might sound harsh, but it is true. A life full of small payments can look normal and still be financially suffocating. That is why you need a payment ceiling, a limit, a line you do not cross. Not because the bank says no, because you say no first. That is authority. And authority also means knowing when affordability is an illusion. If buying something means you cannot save, you cannot afford it. If buying something means you must carry anxiety for weeks, you cannot afford it. If buying something means an emergency would break you, you cannot afford it. If buying something means you must pretend it is an investment to avoid guilt, you may not be able to afford the truth. Affordability is not just whether the card approves. Affordability is whether the purchase fits inside a stable life. Now let us talk about lifestyle inflation. Because this is where people with rising income often get trapped. At first they think more money will solve everything. And more money can help. Of course it can. Income matters. But if every increase in income immediately becomes a more expensive identity, then income rises and freedom stays flat. You earn more. So you upgrade the apartment. You earn more. So you upgrade the car. You earn more. So you upgrade restaurants. You earn more. So you upgrade clothes. You earn more. So you upgrade vacations. You earn more. So you upgrade the circle of people you compare yourself to. And suddenly, the old stress returns at a higher price point. This is one of the strangest financial traps. People do improve their lifestyle, but not their position. They look better, eat better, travel better, own better things, but they are still one disruption away from panic. That means the lifestyle changed. The vulnerability did not. Real progress is not only being able to buy more. Real progress is needing less approval from what you buy. Real progress is not having a higher cost identity every time your income grows. Real progress is increasing the gap between what you earn and what your ego demands. That gap is where freedom grows, not in the salary itself, in the gap. If you earn more and the gap grows, you gain power. If you earn more and the gap disappears, you only changed costumes. This is why the most powerful financial habit is not extreme cheapness. It is controlled expansion. You can improve your life, but not automatically. Not every raise needs to become a lifestyle upgrade. Not every bonus needs to become a purchase. Not every good month needs to become permission to reset your standards upward forever. Some increases should become savings. Some should become investments. Some should become debt reduction. Some can become enjoyment. But if all of it becomes a new normal, you will always need more. And needing more forever is not freedom. It is a treadmill with better lighting. So decide in advance. When your income grows, where will the growth go? Before it arrives? Not after. After it arrives, your imagination will start negotiating. A better place, a better car, a better setup, a better wardrobe, a better trip, a better lifestyle. The mind is brilliant at spending money that just appeared, so make the decision before the money becomes emotional. For example, half of any increase goes to future building. A portion goes to enjoyment. A portion goes to reducing pressure. Whatever ratio fits your life. But choose. If you do not choose, lifestyle inflation will choose for you. And lifestyle inflation is patient. It does not destroy you quickly. It adjusts you slowly, until yesterday's luxury becomes today's need. That is the process. First, something feels special. Then it feels normal. Then it feels necessary. Then losing it feels like failure. That is how spending becomes identity. And once spending becomes identity, cutting it feels like losing status, not reducing cost. Losing status. That emotional pain is why people hold on to expensive lives even when those lives are hurting them. They are not only cutting expenses, they are grieving a version of themselves, a version that ate at certain places, wore certain things, traveled a certain way, had certain subscriptions, said yes to certain plans, looked like someone who did not have to think about money. But thinking about money is not failure. Pretending you do not need to think about money while your life gets tighter is failure. There is dignity in adjusting. There is dignity in choosing a simpler life on purpose. There is dignity in using something longer because it still works. There is dignity in saying, "That is not where my money goes anymore." There is dignity in refusing to finance appearances, but society often rewards appearance faster than discipline. That is why this path can feel lonely. The disciplined decision is quiet. The purchase is visible. Nobody sees the debt you avoided. Nobody sees the emergency fund you built. Nobody sees the investment you made. Nobody sees the payment you refused. Nobody sees the anxiety you prevented. But everybody can see the new thing. So if you need applause to make good financial decisions, you will struggle. Financial maturity requires doing invisible things long enough for them to become visible later. Not in applause. In options. In peace. In resilience. In the ability to move. That is what you are buying when you save. You are not buying nothing. You are buying future choices. A choice to leave. A choice to wait. A choice to invest. A choice to say no. A choice to help without collapsing. A choice to rest without panic. A choice to handle a problem without begging the next paycheck to arrive. Those choices are not flashy, but they are powerful. And the more choices you own, the less the world can corner you. That is why impulse spending is not harmless when repeated. It does not just buy things. It sells choices, one at a time, quietly. A little less choice next month, a little less margin, a little less power, a little less ability to respond, a little less future. And because it happens slowly, people normalize the shrinking. They start arranging their life around lack of margin. They say no to opportunities because they cannot afford the transition. They stay in jobs because they cannot afford uncertainty. They tolerate stress because they cannot afford a break. They avoid healthcare because they cannot afford the bill. They borrow for emergencies because they never built a buffer. And then life feels unfair. Sometimes it is. But sometimes it is also the compound result of many small choices that were never connected in your mind. This is the uncomfortable thing about financial life. Your habits compound before your money does. If your habits are chaotic, chaos compounds. If your habits are intentional, options compound. That is why small corrections matter. They are not small if they repeat. A small leak repeated for years becomes a missing foundation. A small transfer repeated for years becomes a foundation. The difference is direction. So stop asking whether a single purchase matters. Ask whether the pattern matters. Because the pattern is the real purchase. You are not buying one coffee. You are buying a daily ritual. You are not buying one delivery order. You are buying a fatigue response. You are not buying one outfit. You are buying a status strategy. You are not buying one gadget. You are buying the feeling of progress. You are not saying yes to one expensive plan. You are buying belonging. One time may be fine. The pattern is what needs judgment. And if a pattern is not serving the life you want, do not negotiate with it endlessly. Replace it. Do not only remove, replace. If delivery is your fatigue response, prepare a low-effort food option before fatigue arrives. If shopping is your boredom response, create another boredom response. If scrolling triggers comparison, reduce the exposure. If social spending is your belonging response, propose cheaper plans or choose different circles. If buying tools is your progress response, require action before upgrading. If giving money is your guilt response, create a giving budget that does not destroy you. If upgrades are your identity response, define a replacement cycle and respect it. The point is not to become joyless. The point is to make the smart choice easier than the impulsive one. That is design. And design beats desire more often than pride wants to admit. People love to think change comes from heroic discipline. Sometimes it does, briefly, but lasting change usually comes from boring architecture. The food is ready, so you do not order. The savings transfer happened, so you do not debate it. The card is not stored, so you do not buy instantly. The app is deleted, so the impulse has to work harder. The goal is named, so stealing from it hurts more. The limit is set, so the social plan has boundaries. The rule exists, so the mood does not write the law. That is how you build a life where good decisions do not require constant drama. And this matters because financial stress is already dramatic enough. Your system should make life calmer, not more theatrical. A lot of people fail because their plan is too aggressive. They try to stop everything. No spending, no pleasure, no restaurants, no clothes, no fun. No flexibility. For 2 weeks it feels powerful, then it becomes unbearable. Then they break it. Then they overspend. Then they feel guilty. Then they promise to become strict again. That cycle is not discipline. It is financial binge and purge. It does not work. A sustainable plan must include pleasure, but planned pleasure. Pleasure with a container. Pleasure that does not invade the emergency fund. Pleasure that does not use credit to pretend it is affordable. Pleasure that does not require lying to yourself. When enjoyment has a budget, you can actually enjoy it. No guilt, no vague fear. No, I should not have done this, because the money was assigned. That is the paradox. Limits do not ruin pleasure. They make clean pleasure possible. Without limits, pleasure often comes with aftertaste. A little worry, a little guilt, a little avoidance, a little I will fix it later. But when pleasure is planned, it ends when it ends. It does not leave a mess behind. That is what you want. Not a life without pleasure. A life where pleasure does not sabotage peace. Now there is another layer. Your social environment. This may be the hardest part because it feels personal. Some people are expensive to be around. Not because they are bad people. Because the version of life they normalize costs more than you can afford right now. Every plan costs. Every meeting costs. Every celebration escalates. Every conversation implies comparison. Every choice becomes a signal. And if you are not grounded, you will spend to stay socially synchronized. You will call it friendship. You will call it networking. You will call it living. Sometimes that is true. But sometimes it is fear. Fear that if you stop spending, you will stop belonging. Here's the question. If a relationship requires you to repeatedly damage your financial stability to remain included, what exactly are you belonging to? That question is uncomfortable. Good, because it separates connection from performance. Real connection can survive simpler plans. Performance cannot. If the only way to be accepted is to keep paying the entry fee, maybe it is not belonging. Maybe it is subscription-based approval. And that is a very expensive product. So create social boundaries. Not dramatic speeches, not moral superiority, just clarity. I am not doing that this month. That is outside my budget. I can join for this part, not that part. Let us do something simpler. I am focusing on something financially right now. You will learn a lot from how people react. Some will respect it. Some will mock it. Some will pressure you. Some will disappear. That information is valuable because financial stability often requires social editing, not isolation, editing. choosing who has access to your time, money, emotions, and standards, because the people around you help define what feels normal. If everyone around you treats debt as normal, debt feels normal. If everyone upgrades constantly, upgrading feels normal. If everyone spends to impress, restraint feels like failure. If everyone talks about building, investing, simplifying, creating, and gaining freedom, your standards change. Environment does not replace responsibility, but it shapes resistance. And if your environment makes every good decision feel like social punishment, you need to notice that. Now, none of this means you should become judgmental. This is not about looking down on people. It is about refusing to let other people's spending rhythm become your financial destiny. They may have different incomes, different debts, different family support, different goals, different levels of risk, different illusions you do not know. So do not copy. Do not copy lifestyles blindly. Do not copy upgrades. Do not copy vacations. Do not copy cars. Do not copy the appearance of stability. Especially because a lot of stability is staged. You see the trip. You do not see the balance. You see the car. You do not see the payment pressure. You see the dinner. You do not see the anxiety. You see the new thing. You do not see the missing emergency fund. Comparison is financially dangerous because it gives you incomplete data. You are comparing your full reality with someone else's edited signal. And then you spend real money responding to incomplete information. That is a terrible trade. So protect your attention. Attention becomes desire. Desire becomes justification. Justification becomes purchase. Purchase becomes pattern. Pattern becomes life. It starts earlier than you think. Not at checkout, at exposure, at what you keep looking at who you keep measuring yourself against, at what you keep calling normal. If you want to spend differently, you may need to look differently. Follow different inputs. Change what your mind consumes. Reduce the content that turns your life into a disappointment. Because if your life always feels insufficient, saving will feel like punishment. You will want to buy your way out of the feeling. But if your life feels like something you are building, saving becomes part of the construction. That shift matters. You are not denying yourself. You are funding the build. And when you start seeing your life as something you are building, your money stops feeling like fuel for escape. It becomes material. Material for stability. Material for movement. Material for options. Material for peace. Material for a future you can actually stand inside. That does not mean every dollar must be serious. It means every dollar should have a place. Some money is for survival. Some is for protection. Some is for growth. Some is for joy. Some is for generosity. Some is for risk. Some is for dreams. But money without a place becomes available to the loudest emotion in the room. And the loudest emotion is not always the wisest one. That is why you need rules before you need motivation. Rules sound boring. But rules save you from negotiating with yourself when you are least qualified to negotiate. Late at night, after a bad day, after seeing someone else's life online, after an argument, after a hard week, after getting paid, after feeling like you deserve compensation for existing under pressure. That is when your rules matter. Not when you are calm. Anyone can be financially wise while calm. The real test is what happens when you are emotionally activated. When something inside you says, I need to feel different right now. That sentence is dangerous, because spending can make you feel different right now. It works. For a moment. That is why telling people do not spend emotionally is not enough. Emotional spending works. It gives relief. It gives sensation. It gives control. It gives novelty. It gives a story. It gives a tiny before and after. You were stressed. Now something is coming. You were insecure. Now you have a new item. You were bored. Now you are anticipating delivery. You are tired. Now someone else is solving dinner. You are feeling small. Now you bought proof that you are not. The problem is not that it fails immediately. The problem is that it succeeds temporarily. And temporary success can become a long-term trap. So you need to build alternative relief. Not just deny relief. A person who is exhausted needs real recovery. A person who is lonely needs connection. A person who feels behind needs direction. A person who feels insecure needs evidence of growth, not just symbols. A person who feels bored needs meaningful stimulation. A person who feels out of control needs systems. If you remove spending but replace nothing, the old habit comes back, because the emotional need remains. So the question is not, how do I stop buying comfort? The better question is, what comfort am I missing so badly that I keep buying substitutes? That is deeper and more useful. Maybe you do not need another purchase. Maybe you need sleep. Maybe you need a simpler schedule. Maybe you need to stop following accounts that make you hate your normal life. Maybe you need cheaper rituals that still feel good. Maybe you need to cook in a way that does not feel like punishment. Maybe you need friends who do not require financial performance. Maybe you need to admit that your job is draining you. Maybe you need a plan to change your income. Maybe you need to stop calling every emotional escape self-care. Because self-care has become one of the easiest ways to disguise financial self-harm. Not always. Sometimes self-care is real. Rest is real. Health is real. Joy is real. Beauty is real. Comfort is real. But if your self-care repeatedly creates stress later, you need to question the word. Care that harms your future is not complete care. It is relief with consequences. And sometimes that is okay. Life is imperfect. But if it becomes a pattern, it is no longer care. It is avoidance. That distinction can change your life because avoidance is expensive. It charges interest in money, time, attention, and delayed decisions. Avoiding your budget does not remove the numbers. Avoiding your debt does not freeze it. Avoiding your spending pattern does not make it softer. Avoiding your emotional triggers does not make them disappear. Avoidance only delays the moment of truth. And delayed truth usually becomes more expensive truth, so face it early. Not with panic, with precision. Open your accounts. Look at the last month. Label the spending. Choose one leak. Only one if you need to. Close it. Then choose another. This is not glamorous, but it is how control returns. Control returns through repeated contact with reality. Not fantasy, not motivation. Reality. What came in? What went out? What was necessary? What was emotional? What was useful? What was performance? What was planned joy? What was avoidance? What will change next month? Those questions are not punishment. They are leadership. You are leading your own money instead of letting the month happen to you. That shift alone can restore dignity. Because chaos makes people feel childish. Like money is something that happens to them. Like they are always reacting, always catching up, always promising, always ashamed. But leadership feels different, even with small numbers, even with debt, even with imperfect progress. A person who looks at the truth and makes one better decision is already different from the person who refuses to look. Do not underestimate that. Financial change often begins before the numbers look impressive. It begins when you stop hiding, when you stop making every purchase a special exception. When you stop pretending that future you will magically be stronger, richer, and more disciplined than present you. Future you is not a superhero. Future you is just you, later, living with the consequences of what you normalized. So stop handing problems to future you, as if future you has unlimited strength. That is not fair. Future you deserves support. Money saved is support. Debt avoided is support. A system is support. A named goal is support. A boundary is support. A waiting rule is support. A lower-cost lifestyle is support. A clean relationship with pleasure is support. You are either supporting future you or exhausting future you. There is not much neutral ground. This does not mean you must live scared of spending. Fear is not the goal. Fear creates rigidity. Rigidity breaks. The goal is respect. Respect for your work. Respect for your time. Respect for your future. Respect for your limits. Respect for your right to enjoy life without turning enjoyment into sabotage. Respect asks better questions than fear. Fear says, do not buy anything. Respect says, or does this belong in the life I'm building? Fear says, you are bad with money. Respect says, this pattern is not serving you. Fear says, you must suffer now to be safe later. Respect says, protect the future without turning the present into a prison. That is the balance. You need enough structure to build freedom, and enough joy to keep living. But joy must be honest. Honest joy is clean. You planned it. You can afford it. It does not break protection. It does not create debt you resent. It does not require lying. It does not come from trying to impress people who are not responsible for your life. It does not leave you emotionally hungover. That is the kind of enjoyment worth keeping. Because the point is not to become someone who never spends. The point is to become someone whose spending tells the truth. This is what financial clarity feels like. You buy less from confusion. You buy more from intention. You stop using purchases as emotional translation. You stop buying things to say what you are afraid to become. You stop using credit to turn feelings into obligations. You stop letting social pressure write your monthly plan. You stop asking future you to clean up every emotional mess. And slowly, money becomes less dramatic. That is a good sign. At first, people expect financial improvement to feel exciting. Sometimes it does, but often it feels quieter. Less panic, less mystery, less shame, less where did it go, less avoidance, less performing, less explaining, less hoping the next paycheck fixes everything. That quiet is progress. Do not disrespect it just because it is not flashy. Quiet progress is still progress, and sometimes it is the strongest kind. Because loud progress often wants witnesses, quiet progress only needs repetition. Repetition is where financial identity changes. 1 month of good behavior is encouraging. 6 months creates evidence. 2 years changes self-respect. 5 years can alter your life options. 10 years can separate 2 people who once earned the same income. One kept buying emotional relief. The other kept buying freedom. At first they looked similar. Maybe the spender even looked better. Better clothes, better meals, better photos, better upgrades, better stories. But time reveals the difference. Because appearance compounds differently than assets. Debt compounds, stress compounds, avoidance compounds, but savings compound too. Investments can compound, skills compound, discipline compounds, peace compounds, options compound, and eventually, the invisible starts becoming visible. Not as bragging, as range, as mobility, as calm, as the ability to make decisions from strength instead of panic. That is what you are actually building. Range. The range to choose. The range to pause. The range to leave. The range to invest. The range to help without collapsing. The range to survive a bad month. The range to say, I do not have to accept this just because I am desperate. That range is worth more than many things people buy to look successful. Because looking successful and being less trapped are not the same thing. A lot of people look successful in public and feel cornered in private. They have the symbols, but not the margin. They have the lifestyle, but not the freedom. They have the payments, but not the peace. And that is not success. That is a performance with a billing cycle. You do not want that. Or at least, you should not want that once you see it clearly. Because a life built for appearance needs constant funding. A life built for freedom needs direction. Direction is less glamorous, but more powerful. Direction says, I know what this season is for. That sentence can simplify everything. Maybe this season is for debt reduction. Maybe it is for building an emergency fund. Maybe it is for investing. Maybe it is for increasing income. Maybe it is for preparing a transition. Maybe it is for stabilizing after chaos. Maybe it is for learning to stop using money emotionally. But define the season. Because if you do not define the season, every desire will act like it has equal importance. And it does not. A season of building is not the same as a season of showing off. A season of recovery is not the same as a season of luxury. A season of investment is not the same as a season of consumption. A season of transition is not the same as a season of comfort. You must know where you are, not to limit your life forever, to stop demanding the wrong thing from the wrong season. Some people are trying to live a celebration season while they are still in a foundation season. That mismatch creates financial pain. Because foundations are not glamorous. Foundations are underground. Nobody compliments foundations. Nobody takes pictures of foundations, but everything stands on them. If you skip the foundation because it is boring, the visible part of your life becomes unstable. That is exactly what happens financially. People decorate before they stabilize, upgrade before they protect, display before they build, reward before they recover. And then the smallest shock shakes everything. So ask, what foundation am I avoiding because I keep spending on decoration? That question can hurt. Let it. A useful question should sometimes hurt, not to shame you. To wake you up. Maybe your foundation is an emergency fund. Maybe it is paying off high-interest debt. Maybe it is tracking spending honestly. Maybe it is separating accounts. Maybe it is building a basic investment habit. Maybe it is creating a realistic food plan. Maybe it is telling your family no. Maybe it is earning more. Maybe it is stopping the identity upgrades. Whatever it is, fund the foundation first. Enjoyment can still exist, but not as a replacement for the foundation. Because a life full of decoration and no foundation eventually becomes anxiety with nice lighting. And you deserve better than that. You deserve a life where enjoyment is not followed by dread, where money does not vanish mysteriously, where your future is not constantly sacrificed for your mood, where your income does more than pass through you, where your decisions make you more solid over time. That life is not built by one dramatic sacrifice. It is built by a new financial identity, and that identity can start with a few commitments. I do not buy to prove. I do not buy to escape every uncomfortable feeling. I do not buy a future version of myself unless I am already acting like that person. I do not let unplanned spending outrank planned freedom. I do not use credit to preserve an image. I do not call everything self-care when some of it is avoidance. I do not confuse being able to pay with being able to afford. I do not ask future me to suffer because present me wanted 10 minutes of relief. Those commitments are not easy, but they are clean. They create a line, and adults need lines. Without lines, desire expands forever. There is no natural end. You think one upgrade will satisfy you, then the upgrade becomes normal. You think one purchase will complete the image. Then the image demands maintenance. You think one reward will be enough. Then the week gets hard again. You think one income increase will solve everything. Then your lifestyle adapts. Without lines, wanting has no bottom. That does not make you bad. It makes you human. Humans adapt quickly. We normalize comfort. We compare upward. We seek novelty. We justify ourselves. We protect our ego. We avoid pain. That is why systems matter. They protect us from the parts of our humanity that companies learned how to monetize. And yes, that sentence is uncomfortable, but it is also liberating. Because if your behavior has been shaped, it can be reshaped. If your environment has trained you to spend, you can train your environment to protect you. If your identity has been attached to consumption, you can attach it to construction. You can become the kind of person who enjoys money without being consumed by what money can buy. That is a rare kind of freedom, and it starts very practically. This week, choose one emotional spending door. Not 10, one. The door you already know is costing you. Maybe it is late-night shopping. Maybe it is delivery after work. Maybe it is buying clothes when you feel insecure. Maybe it is saying yes to social plans that stretch you. Maybe it is subscriptions you ignore. Maybe it is lending money from guilt. Maybe it is buying productivity tools instead of doing the work. Maybe it is upgrading devices too often. Choose one, then build friction around it. Do not rely on shame. Do not rely on motivation. Do not rely on the version of you that is calm right now. Build friction for the version of you that appears later. The tired one, the lonely one, the insecure one, the impulsive one, the one who says, "Forget it, I will fix it later." That version needs boundaries, not hatred. Boundaries. If you can do that, you will begin to see something. The urge rises, then it falls. You do not die. You do not disappear. You do not become less worthy. You do not lose your identity. You simply did not obey. That moment is powerful, because the first time you do not obey an expensive emotion, you learn that the emotion was not the boss. It was loud, but it was not the boss. And once you learn that, money becomes different. You still want things. You still enjoy things. You still make mistakes. But you are no longer hypnotized in the same way. You start noticing the script. The sales script, the social script, the insecurity script, the fatigue script, the identity script, the you deserve it script, the everyone has it script, the this will finally make you better script. And once you hear the script, it loses some of its magic. That is the point of this entire conversation. Not to make you afraid of spending, to make you awake while spending. Because awake spending can be joyful. Awake saving can be powerful. Awake investing can be strategic. Awake generosity can be beautiful. Awake simplicity can be peaceful. But unconscious spending, even when it looks fun, often becomes a quiet tax on your future. A tax on your choices. A tax on your peace. A tax on the person you are trying to become. So the final question is not, what should I stop buying? That is too small. The real question is, who is my money turning me into? Because every month your spending is shaping an identity. Maybe it is shaping a person who reacts, a person who performs, a person who escapes, a person who needs approval, a person who cannot sit with discomfort, a person who always waits for the next paycheck. Or maybe it can shape someone else, someone who directs, someone who chooses, someone who enjoys without losing control, someone who protects the future, someone who is not for sale to every mood, someone who understands that freedom is built before it is visible. That second person will not appear because you watched a video. That person appears through repeated decisions, small ones, boring ones, private ones, the kind nobody claps for. But one day, those decisions will create a life that feels less trapped, less frantic, less performative, less dependent on the next purchase to feel okay. And when that happens, you will understand something that no advertisement wants you to understand. You are not missing a more expensive life. You are missing a more directed one. That is the difference. A more expensive life can still be chaotic. A more directed life can become free. So before the next purchase, pause. Not forever, just long enough to come back to yourself. Ask, is this mine or was this planted in me? Is this useful or is this emotional rent? Is this joy or is this escape? Is this affordable or just payable? Is this building my life or financing a personality? That last question may sting. Good. Keep it. Because if your money keeps financing a personality, you will always need another payment to keep that personality alive. But if your money starts building a life, you will need less performance over time. Less proving, less pretending, less chasing, less panic, and more room. Room to breathe, room to choose, room to leave, room to build, room to enjoy without fear. That is what saving is really about. Not becoming cold, not becoming cheap, not refusing pleasure. It is about buying room inside your own life. And room is priceless when you have lived too long without it. So decide carefully, because every purchase answers a question. Not just, what do I want right now? But, what future am I willing to make smaller for this? Sometimes the answer will be, this is worth it. Good. Enjoy it. Cleanly. Fully. Without guilt. But sometimes the answer will be, no, this is just a feeling trying to spend my money. And when you can say that, calmly, without drama, you are already changing. Not because the number in your account transformed instantly, but because the person managing that number is no longer asleep. And that is where financial freedom begins. Not in a bank account, not in a perfect spreadsheet, not in a motivational quote. It begins in the moment you stop letting every emotion access your future. It begins when money gets a mission. It begins when your identity stops being rented back to you through purchases. It begins when you realize that the strongest version of you may not be the one that can buy everything. It may be the one that no longer needs to.